Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lanore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is November 25th, 2019. For those of you listening to this show 100 years from now, and you realize that we were way ahead of the curve. We're way ahead of the curve of everybody today. I just got the most beautiful testimonial from Ron Penna, the original founder of Quest Nutrition, who just started a new company called Legendary Foods. Why Legendary Foods is signed up to be the title sponsor of Superhuman Radio for 2020, but that's we'll save that for another show. So I started talking about katsu. I actually had a Japanese scientist on in around end of 2006, if I remember correctly. I went back and looked at some of this information, talking about a method of using vascular restriction, blood flow restriction, to help wounds and injuries recover faster. And when we saw the value of that in this wound recovery scenario, everybody started thinking, wait a minute, what if you're not wounded? What if you don't have an injury to recover from? What if you start employing this blood flow restriction technique to healthy muscles to help them grow faster, get bigger? And sure enough, a lot of the early research showed that there was real efficacy here. Now, I got to say something, and you've heard me say this before in 14 years. Excuse me. When stuff works, it's great, but there's a responsibility not to abuse it. You've heard me say these words numerous times, talking recently about IGF-1 long R3. The good news is BFR works. The bad news is BFR works. If you don't know what you're doing, it may not be a good outcome. Let's just say that. And we're going to get to the bottom of that. The reason I say this up front is because everything we discuss from this point forward will be prefaced on the right way of doing that. My guest today is Dr. James Stray-Gundersen. He was actually on my show talking about BFR all the way back in 2015. It's been a long time. How you doing, Dr. Stray-Gundersen?
Very good, Carl. Thank you.
Yes. So a lot of the stuff we talked about in 2015 actually has come to fruition now. But I want to get this out there up front again. You heard what I said about things that work and not abusing them, right? Mm-hmm. So the same is true of this science, this product, because it can be misused, correct?
The general category, yes, it can be misused, and in particular, most of the products that are out there are either too expensive and where they have the safety things in place, or they're inexpensive and then they're unlikely to be safe or effective. And I think we kind of hit it out of the park with making a product that we hope will be, well, we would say idiot-proof and able to be safe and effective at all times.
Now, I want to say up front that I've used this product, and I have to say I want to build on this a little bit. And I actually shared some of these thoughts with your wife, Holly.
Yeah.
I have always looked at BFR like, oh, man, come on, give me a break. I'm going to put things up on my arms and my legs. I'm just going to go in there and train, and that's it. And I have stayed away from BFR, and I'm really honest because I didn't want to be that guy in the gym with the paraphernalia on. But because I started to experiment with it, not only did I realize that I had been completely mistaken for feeling that way, because the reality is that this is a super opportunity to increase the efficiency of every workout.
Right.
But I made a statement on a show a couple weeks ago, and I think I can say this with all humility because I've used a lot of gear in my day. I mean, everybody on my show knows that I've used very, very high doses of anabolic steroids for many, many years. I don't any longer. Now I'm 61 years old. I use sensible doses of testosterone. But I had better results with this BFR blood flow restriction training system from B Strong in just a couple weeks than I've ever seen on any high doses of anabolic steroids. And I actually said, I've actually said that the B Strong system is more effective at building muscle in the targeted muscles than anabolic steroids. And I know that you probably would get real far away from a statement like that, but and ever since I've said that, people have bought the system, and I'm getting messages and posts on Facebook where people going, I never thought my arms could be this big.
Yeah. Carl, I think you're right on. I view this as a natural, safe way of getting the same effects that people can get with anabolic steroids or growth hormone or that sort of thing.
So let's talk about wearing them. So I'm under the impression from my own personal experience, when I wear them on my upper arms and I train arms, I notice a greater pump in my shoulders. Is it in fact, since it's restricting blood flow in and out of the limb, but is it not increasing the pressure and ergo you're getting that same pump effect in the muscle just north of the BFR band?
Very, very good. That's very astute, Carl. What happens is we are changing the character of the venous flow out of the muscle, out of the extremity. But what that does is it kind of screws up the timing to deliver blood and oxygen to not only the muscles that are below the band, but also muscles that are active in the exercise that are above the band. So, for example, if you're doing a bench press, you're getting fatigue in your pecs as well as some of the other muscles that you're using for that bench press, even though theoretically their blood flow is not being restricted.
So another thing, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm still not over this upper respiratory thing. So another thing that I did, and I shared this with Sean Whalen, I said, I went out to do cardio one morning, and I decided to put the BFR bands up on my upper legs. And it literally turned a cardio session into what felt like I had been lunging the couple miles that I walked. And my calves, everything were super, super pumped, and it made walking more difficult. Right. Is this a sensible thing to use them for?
Absolutely. And so let me take a kind of larger case. And that is that for us to make progress in training, we have to perturb the system more than it otherwise is. So that's why, people get used to doing one kind of workout, whether it's aerobic running or whether it's in the weightlifting gym. They kind of plateau because they get used to doing what they're doing. And for people to advance, you have to go farther. Usually when you get to be when people are pretty accomplished runners or weightlifters or whatever, it's hard to do the extra workouts. By just putting the bands on, you can make what is otherwise easy for you essentially an interval workout, get a good fatigue signal, and then that translates into this nice hormonal cascade that then takes you farther. So
we're going to talk about that hormonal cascade in a minute and get deeper into it. But what about early on? It was said that the only way to use blood flow restriction was with light weight. But if you're not completely occluding the muscle and blood flow is still occurring in and out, the exchange,
right?
Why can't you go heavy with these bands on?
Well, there's nothing to say that you can't. We've just found over time it's most effective to do something where you can do 3 sets of 30 reps or fail in the last set of 30 reps. And that just can't be too heavy to be able to do that. And but for example, there are people who are let's say they're doing 100-kilo bench presses, and if they put the bands on, they can get the same really good work out of doing 25-kilo bench presses, which is safer, and you can actually take it to a farther or higher extreme of fatigue and then get a better effect from that workout.
So let's talk about the science behind BFR. It's come a long way now. The science shows that anytime the muscle gets congested, whether through blood flow restriction or just working in such high volume, that intramuscular growth factors like IGF-1, mechano growth factor, which is IGF-1E, they are produced in the muscle themselves. Is that as a result of lactate buildup, or is that something else happening? That because obviously it happens when you're wearing the bands too.
Right. So this may be a little complicated, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible.
Oh no, don't worry about it. My audience is very intelligent. Speak like you're speaking to university students, really.
Well, they're not so bright.
Okay, good one.
So the basic thing that is happening here with the bands is that we are depriving the working muscle of blood and oxygen at a time when they need it. There's still lots of blood flow, there's still lots of oxygen, but it's just not getting to the right place at the right time. The consequence of that hypoxia is there's lots of things that happen. One is you upregulate protein synthesis. Another thing is you upregulate cell surface membrane receptors for various hormones. Number 3 is you change over to kind of an anaerobic metabolism where you're producing lactate, which in and of itself stimulates the muscle to adapt. And so those are the local responses to this kind of thing. But then this disturbance of homeostasis or this metabolic crisis that's been created is sensed by the brain or the CNS, and then starts to release this hormonal cascade where not only do you start putting out growth hormone and endorphins and a variety of other things, but that those growth hormones have a number of effects. One is to increase IGF-1 out of the liver, which then amplifies what's going on in the local tissues, any tissues that we're exercising, whether they were distal or proximal to the bands. And then in addition to that, growth hormone is lipolytic. It breaks down fat. And so what ends up happening is that the outcome of this kind of training on a regular basis, the predominant effect is that those muscles that were worked get stronger and the individual gets leaner. And those two things are performance enhancers for any age.
Now, you see these in practical application. You work with
Absolutely.
athletes, correct?
Absolutely.
So because a lot of times we get caught up in the science, but the science doesn't always translate to the real world.
Right.
This really is what happens when people use the Be Strong BFR system regularly, right?
We have, I mean, it's a bit of a secret, and not all our athletes really want me talking about this, but we have a number of very prominent athletes who have taken a step up in their performance since starting to use Be Strong. And in all sorts of sports, from marathoning to weightlifting to everything in between.
So give me an example of how the marathoner is using the Be Strong bands. Is it using it the way I was using it to take a walk around the neighborhood?
Well, kind of. They would do shorter intervals and running intervals and shorter runs than they otherwise would. But essentially, those absolute workloads would be very trivial for them. And so this is the key to this Be Strong stuff is the idea of doing what are otherwise trivial workloads with the bands on that produce the same effects that really hard interval workouts or long runs do.
So you're actually preserving, or you're staying away from an overtraining. The central nervous system is what ends up crashing, not the peripheral muscles.
Right.
So you're actually preserving and training in an area where the body goes, wow, we can manage this, but the muscles are undergoing the same adaptive effects as if you had run 3 times longer.
Exactly. So here's the thing. Training is all this balance between breakdown and buildup from a given training session. And what we do is we really decrease the cost and the absolute workload of that training. And because of that, we get a really nice benefit for adaptation. And the workout is easier to recover from, so you can even do more workouts. So this is a way of getting around the plateau that often happens with people who are training hard. They get to a point where, yes, they can do another interval workout, but it causes a lot of damage and it takes a long time to recover, preventing them from doing other sorts of workouts. Here we've shifted that balance. That's really what it's all about.
Now, you said the word interval. So a lot of people love high-intensity interval training as their form of cardio.
Do them with the bands on.
How would I do them with the bands on to get the greatest adaptation without pushing my body to extremes?
Yeah. So, for example, I'll jump to be really, really specific, and that is you do 5 times a minute with 2 to 3 minutes rest in between, and you do them with the bands on, and you can do them with all 4 bands on.
5 times a minute, or 5 1-minute all-out sprints?
5 1-minute sprints.
Okay. And do you even have to push as hard as you normally would, since the bands are creating this environment like you're running faster?
You're exactly right. You don't have to push as hard as you otherwise would. And what happens is the key to knowing that you're getting an effective session is if you're getting those feelings of fatigue. And if you're getting the feelings of fatigue, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have an effective session.
So I have to believe that this, I like to wear, first of all, I've been doing whole body routines with the band. So I go in with both my upper legs banded off and my upper arms banded off. And I'll do push, pull, I'll do legs, and I move around and I keep things moving, and I do this. I can't help but think that there's some sort of cardiovascular benefit to the heart, because
there is
this, you've got this restriction going on, this partitioning of blood, if you will. What is that doing for me systemically?
Well, there's two systemic influences going on. One is along with growth hormone and IGF-1 and a variety of other hormones, the venous side and the capillaries, they get distended and then collapsed as you're doing these workouts, as there's kind of a dam that's been put in place in the proximal veins. And this kind of distension and throwing out or pushing out of all this blood ends up stretching the endothelium, which is a stimulus for the endothelium to adapt. And so we've documented increases in VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, HIF-1 alpha, the nitric oxide synthase system enzymes. All of these things are designed to frankly heal and improve and increase the amount of endothelium you have. And so that's kind of the secret potion in terms of the vascular system, both for the heart and the blood vessels and everything else. And you can think of this as kind of Drano for atherosclerosis over time. So this is really a very important part to getting vascular adaptations that benefit you from the work that you're otherwise doing.
Now, I want to inject, because Kirk Yeager sent to me this morning in anticipation of this interview, a paper that was published by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld and his group, looking at blood flow restriction, but in reality, they were really looking at blood flow occlusion, because what they indicated was that there could be endothelial dysfunction if, in fact, the blood flow is restricted greater than 70%.
Right.
But your product like you said earlier, is kind of idiot proof. You really couldn't completely occlude using your product.
I think at this point I need to explain two main types of blood flow restriction systems. One is what I would call rigid, and the other is what we call elastic.
Yeah, rigid being like a tourniquet, right?
A tourniquet.
Because a lot of people are going out and buying $11 tourniquets, and they're just cinching off their upper arms, and I think this is a mistake.
It's crazy. That's exactly the way to not be safe and not be effective. Right. But so imagine a blood pressure cuff. When you put the blood pressure cuff on and the Velcro holds, then there's no way that you can increase the cross-sectional area inside of the cuff.
Right.
And that's what we call a rigid system. So that goes for surgical tourniquets, any kind of tourniquets, any kind of non-elastic belt material. The only two good systems out there that are elastic are Katsu and Be Strong. And we get this elasticity in slightly different ways. But the point is that when you're using these elastic systems compared to the rigid systems, they're much more, they're much safer, and they can end up being much more effective. One of the things about this is you have to get over this venous pressure to restrict the veins in the first place. But when you're using a rigid system, every time the muscle contracts, the pressure just shoots up inside this cross-sectional area that has nowhere to go.
Right.
And that puts it above arterial pressure, which then occludes the extremity. So the only way to deal with that is to have an elastic system which accommodates that increase in cross-sectional area of the muscle. And so that's the key differentiator. And your colleague is right about the dangers of an exercise pressure response on one hand, and basically doing ischemic damage when they're talking about rigid cuffs.
And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about ischemia, which is what happens to the heart and the brain and anything that's getting zero oxygen and being put under pressure at the same time, which is what potentially happens when you use tourniquets, which are designed to create occlusion.
Right.
A tourniquet is designed to stop the blood from flowing into the limb.
Bingo.
So when you use the tourniquet, you're literally creating occlusion, not restriction.
Absolutely right. And this is lost on most people when they just talk about blood flow restriction. They don't differentiate between these rigid systems and these elastic systems.
And the elastic systems, in simplest terms, they have some give. So as the muscle starts to swell, they give a little bit. And if you contort and you move in certain angles, they give a little bit, as opposed to a tourniquet, which has no give whatsoever and is literally strangling the limb.
And there's another component to this, and that is the width. So imagine a blood pressure cuff. If you put a blood pressure cuff on your arm, it covers the bicep. Right. And then when you do an arm curl, the bicep gets fatter.
Right.
And with a rigid system, there's nowhere to go. The only thing that can happen is that you increase pressure inside that area, causing ischemia, causing occlusion, all these other sorts of things that you tried hard to avoid. If you have an elastic system and a relatively narrow one, then all of a sudden there's no problem.
Right. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So elastic is good, rigid is bad. Interesting, because I have both.
Okay.
I don't know what Bobby is speaking to, but I'm assuming that he has a blood flow restriction product that he's talking about. Anyway, so there has been a lot of science on blood flow restriction training since you and I first spoke in 2015. Has your group been involved with any of that science?
Yes and no. Some parts of our group are separate from the company and have been doing research, particularly at the University of Texas in Austin. Mm-hmm. In particular, we've looked at two main things. Well, there's been three studies so far. One is looking at this exercise pressure response for walking, doing 5 2-minute intervals on a treadmill, walking at 2 miles an hour. One with a set of Hokinson, essentially a rigid pneumatic system, and then with B strong bands, and then with nothing, just regular walking. And there's a dramatic increase in systolic blood pressure, mean arterial pressure, and something called double product, which gives you an indication of workload on the heart when you're using the rigid systems. And there's no real difference between the just regular walking and the B strong system. Another one, and that addresses this complaint that we've seen in the literature in terms of spiking blood pressure and being hard on the heart when you're using, and that's been with the rigid system. So that's a check mark against them. The other study that's in progress is one in which cancer patients who are sarcopenia have lost a lot of weight and a lot of muscle mass.
Yeah.
Those patients have a pretty tough time post-op. Sometimes the amount of morbidity and mortality or death and
it's tied right to fragility and cachexia, and a lot of times they don't die from cancer, they die from how debilitated their body becomes from the treatment.
Exactly right. And so we have a 6-week pre-op program using B Strong and creatine supplements to see if we can improve their strength and their muscle mass ahead of the operation. And so far, we have preliminary results that all of our patients are getting increases in lean body mass and stronger. So that's promising, but we don't have enough yet to know that we've influenced morbidity and mortality. And then a third study is we were looking at the idea of using bands with a yoga routine and seeing if we can't amplify the benefits of the yoga routine. And that's looking good so far, but that study's in progress.
You know, and just for the record, sarcopenia is a widespread problem in anybody over 60 years old today. Most people don't eat enough protein or quality protein, high leucine protein to stimulate mTOR. A lot of people are on drugs that are actually suppressing mTOR, and they gradually lose muscle year after year until they lose the ability to safely be ambulatory, to get out of chairs, and then they go into a nursing home. And we've done, heck, the first show I ever did was 2006 with the California VA Medical Center. It was like 16,000 men, and basically they said the guys who were strongest at the front end of the study 20 years later, they were still alive. The guys who were weakest at the beginning of the 20-year study, they all died. So there is a direct correlation to longevity and overall strength. And it makes sense, right? We talk about viruses being strong and resistant. Well, we are strong and resistant when we are strong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I have two solutions for this problem. One is when we're 60, we could be blasted off into space where we're weightless, and then it wouldn't matter. But the less flippant response is that it's critical to be able to do the workouts. And for those of us over 60, Be Strong is a perfect way of being able to use easy, doable exercises to get those positive effects for that sarcopenia that's getting after us all.
So Bobby Cooper has a question that I was going to work in anyway, so this is a good segue. You know, is there a way to know that you've got them at just the right tightness? Now, Be Strong kind of has this covered, right? I mean, first of all, the gauge has a big yellow danger triangle if you try to go over 450 millimeters of mercury. And I would imagine that that's because now you're getting into an area where you could be occluding the muscle, right?
Well, there's two. Let me back up a little bit and say there's two aspects to this. One is how you place the band on in the first place, and that doesn't have anything to do with the pressure. But what you can see is, and my answer is a little nebulous, but it's to put it on firm, not too tight, not too loose. You don't want to be able to slip a couple fingers in between the band and yourself. But you also, don't want to sit there and put your foot on the arm and start cranking it as hard as you can.
Right.
And a way to check this is that when you attach the pump and the band is already in place, you'll have something like about 50 millimeters of mercury pressure registered on the gauge. And
just from tightening it on the arm.
Yeah, and some residual air in the bladder of the band. And then what happened? One of our safety features is our pump only goes up to 500 millimeters of mercury, and that 500 millimeters of mercury is really only inflating our bands and causing them to change shape. And they go from being kind of two flat pieces to kind of a cylinder.
Right.
And that cylinder then impacts the tissue, but it's not really all that much. It's got a limit to how much pressure can go in there, or how much force it's transmitting into the extremity, and therefore up to the maximum of our pump, it just our bands are safe.
And the bladders run vertical to the arm and not perpendicular or horizontal, which means that you still have some blood flow in tissue where those bladders aren't really pushing down hard, which to me seems logical, so that you can keep, blood moving, however restricted, moving past the band.
Yeah. So those are the features that we improved on what Katsu does, and made our product eminently safe and, as I said earlier, kind of idiot-proof.
I want to take our first commercial break, and when we come back, I want to tell you how I've been using the bands, and you may end up saying, okay, we thought they could be idiot-proof, but Carl has proven us wrong. So let's do this. Let's take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, by the way, if you want to try the Be Strong bands, there's a special right now, bestrong.training/super-human. Use SHR for 10% off. Plus, they have 6 months same as cash to make it easy for everybody to get these bands and not spend all your Christmas money just on the band. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Men and women, you've heard about hormone optimization. Do you feel like it's something you want to look into? RenewLifeRx.com is the place to start. Their doctors can help you with the solutions. RenewLifeRx.com has a simple process for lab work, consultation, and taking a deep dive into where your hormone levels can be improved. Superhuman Radio listeners get 30% off your initial lab work and consultation. Go to RenewLifeRx.com to schedule your no-obligation phone consultation today. Feel younger, get in better shape, and be more productive at RenewLifeRx.com.
You already know the benefits of red light therapy. Now you have to find the strongest, best one out there at the best price, right? That's where Scott Chevery found himself. He had to create Mito Red Light so you can get the strongest, best red light therapy unit in the world at the absolute best price. And the Superhuman Nation gets an additional discount. Go to MitoRedLight.com and use code SHR to get the lowest price anywhere, plus free shipping inside the USA and deeply discounted shipping worldwide. Go to MitoRedLight.com and use code SHR today. That's MitoRedLight.com. Redcon One is one of the fastest growing supplement companies in the world today. That's because they produce supplements that deliver on their promises. From their flagship pre-workout Total War to their innovative whole food MREs and bars. Now you can get the deepest discount ever offered to any audience anywhere. Use code SHR and get 25% off all Redcon One products today. SHR and 25% off. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com. Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus lifting company, Gym, in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. You know, I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, you know, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do that with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today. If you haven't searched hydrogen water in PubMed yet, you must. Hydrogen-infused water possesses undeniable performance, health, and longevity benefits in the realm of real biohacking. Hydrogen water machines cost hundreds to thousands of dollars. Now you can have the strongest hydrogen-infused water conveniently anywhere you want it, thanks to Drink HRW. They make the only legal and clinically validated formula to create hydrogen water instantly. I thought this stuff was BS till I started using it. The effects on my training and my gut are undeniable. I have more energy and I last longer without stims. You have to try Drink HRW Maximum Strength Hydrogen Water Tablets today. Go to h2waternow.com and use the code SHR for 10% off today. Hey, this is Carl. For 14 years, you've heard me talk about Can-C eye drops, and they being the reason that I do not need reading glasses at now 61 years old. But I regularly get emails and messages from people who've been using Can-C and having some amazing results. Recently, I got an email from a fellow named Chad, who, because he was on dexamethasone eye drops for over 6 months, developed a cataract. Can-C eye drops actually reduced my cataract to the point where even my doctor has a hard time finding it. I will never stop using Can-C eye drops twice a day. I've been using them since 2008, he says. And you should be too. There is no better way to keep your eyes healthy and seeing clearly than Can-C eye drops. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com today and get on board, and we will both be looking into the future with very...
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
So everybody on the show knows me. I overdo everything, Dr. Stray-Gundersen. Everything. I even overdo overdoing. And my body has all the scars to prove it. Surgeries and muscle reattachments and everything else. But you know what? I'll be damned if I'm going to get buried with anything left in this body. Awesome. I want that mortician to look at me and go, wow, this guy got a lot of use out of this body, you know? Awesome. So Porter Cottrell once told me that Lee Labrada told him when he was a young and up-and-coming pro, always leave the gym with a pump. If you train so long that you no longer have a pump, you've trained too long. The longer you keep the pump after training, the faster your muscles will grow. And what Lee realized was stretching the fascia and thus giving more room for individual muscle fibers to fill up with more fluid ultimately leads to a hypertrophic effect. So I thought, leave the gym with a pump. So I've actually been after training, I've continued to wear my Be Strong bands for up to 4 hours after training. And then I take them off. And my legs, my calves, my forearms, everything is visibly thicker and stays like that for most of the evening. Am I abusing this technology, Dr. Stray-Gundersen?
Of course not, Carl.
Okay.
But we don't recommend that, just out of an abundance of caution. The key to an effective session is to get a fatigue signal during the workout. And that's kind of the 90%er. So if you get that fatigue signal, you're going to have an effective workout and you're going to get positive adaptations. Exactly how long to wear them after and to maintain that pump, those things are logical. I think it makes some sense. Exactly how much it adds to doing this, I don't know. I would say that some people start wearing them as a fashion statement, even when they're not working out. So, you're still here and nothing bad's happened doing all that. So, if you think it helps, it's okay.
Okay, so we're going to put this question up because someone else may be just tuning in and haven't heard this, and this is a more concise. But Robert David just basically wants to know, what's the difference between buying tourniquets or those straps and a system like this? So just sum it up when comparing them. Yeah.
So basically, there's some very expensive systems, and then there's some moderate price systems, and then there's some inexpensive or cheap systems. And one of the things is you could run down to Walmart and get a Cub Scout belt and have at it. But that's an example of a very rigid, uncontrolled system, which is unlikely to be safe and unlikely to be effective. Where you get into the very expensive systems, where they're monitoring things, they're going to be safe, and they can be made effective, particularly if they're the elastic type. And then what you do is what we've taken the opportunity to try to find a middle ground, because most people can't afford those expensive systems, and do something that is, as I was trying to say earlier on, the relatively educated, web savvy, adult fitness person, lay person, can use our Be Strong bands both safely and effectively. And the key components are, one is it's pneumatic, which allows us to control exactly how much pressure is going where. And the next thing is that it's elastic, so that we can accommodate as the muscle changes size. And the third thing is an intermediate width, so we're not covering too much muscle. At the same time, we're not putting on a rope tourniquet or something like that.
Right, which is really critical. Bobby Cooper has a couple questions. You really did kind of cover this before, but I know people love this. Vascular occlusion or blood flow restriction both seem to increase growth hormone. But as you said earlier, that growth hormone response is not exclusively intramuscular. You're saying that the liver actually, when it gets this signal from the muscle, starts to increase IGF-1, right?
Oh yeah, the mechanism for these hormonal releases is the following. A metabolic crisis is created in the working muscle, and there are nerve fibers in muscle that kind of, when we're listening to our bodies, that's what we're listening to, those kinds of signals. And so this information goes from the working muscle up into the brain and rattles around in the brain for a while, and then it goes to the thalamus and the hypothalamus, and then the hypothalamus gives a command to the pituitary to release growth hormone and a variety of other factors. The reason I emphasize growth hormone is because that's been well documented, but there's a whole cascade of hormones that are kind of coming out of the pituitary. And then that growth hormone circulates through the whole body. So it has effect on fat cells. It has effects in the liver to create some IGF-1 out of the liver, which then in turn stimulates an anabolic response in those tissues that need it. And then the working muscle itself, their anabolic hormone receptors have been upregulated on the cell surface, where the growth hormone and testosterone and a variety of other things can then interact and amplify the anabolic signal inside the working muscle. So there's local effects, and then there's a systemic effect, and that systemic effect goes throughout the whole body. So that's why, if you're doing arm curls, you're doing them standing up, you're getting a little bit of core activation while you're doing those arm curls just to stabilize yourself. And so your core muscles are actually getting a little bit of benefit from those arm curls.
Here's a highly intelligent question. Is that response in scale with the size of the limb being restricted?
Great question. The more of your body's total muscle mass that you get to give that fatigue signal, the more robust the anabolic cascade is going to be coming out of the brain. And so that's why we recommend not just doing working on arms at one time. We generally recommend making sure multi-joint, like deadlifts and squats and things like that, or high intensity intervals. Where you're getting the whole body working. And for those HIIT intervals, we're also recommending bands on the arms as well as the legs during that kind of time. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize the percent of total body muscle that's going to be giving the brain the signal, hey, I'm having fatigue down here, you better fix it.
I don't know why I didn't use bands before. Probably because I was afraid of two things. everybody told me just buy tourniquets on Amazon, and I became concerned of both the possible for thrombosis, because if you completely occlude the muscle, depending on certain proteins in your blood, you could end up with a blood clot that when you take that tourniquet off, it starts moving around your body. So that was the first thing I was worried about. The other thing I was worried about was, I know from the talking to the Japanese scientists all the way back in late 2006, that a complete vascular occlusion can cause necrotic tissue to build up in the muscle. We're talking about tissue that died,
right? And
now it's caught in there. And so I never had the confidence to go out there and just do this. These bands gave me the confidence because I can see the pressure that I'm putting on each. First of all, I know that my left arm and my right arm have exactly the same pressure. That's a little lie, and I'll explain why. And then, and then when I looked at the bladders, I went, well, they're running vertical, so there's definitely still some exchange of blood going on in my arm as kind of like a safety valve. That gave me greater confidence. What I said, the reason I said that was good. You respond to that, and then I'll tell you why I said that was a lie.
So this gets down to this big reason for elastic BFR. So with elastic BFR, you don't get ischemia, you don't get necrosis, you don't get nerve injury, and you don't get blood clots. And I can explain all these things. So let's say we're doing arm curls. And what happens is during rest, the venous side is virtually occluded, particularly if you're using higher pressures. But then what happens is when you do that arm curl, the forearm muscle contraction and the bicep contraction actually have a muscle pump that pushes blood past the venous obstruction.
Right.
And so what you have when you're doing multiple reps is that you're distending and emptying the veins all the time. And this is actually increasing
in a controlled fashion.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And what that does, the reason why people can get blood clots is if you have stasis of blood in the extremity. And when you occlude an extremity, that's by definition stasis.
Yes.
But when you're doing this with elastic blood flow restriction equipment, then what happens is you increase the amount of venous flow and the changes in venous flow, and that actually helps avoid any kind of clots formation.
So the reason I said I lied when I said I know I have the same pressure on my left arm and my right arm is that I tore the outer head of my bicep. So it's short. The bicep itself is shorter, which leaves this divot on the outside. So I actually have to go about 50 millimeters of mercury higher on the left arm in order to achieve the same pump that I do on the right arm to make up for that divot of flesh that's missing.
We're all unique. We all have little idiosyncrasies that have occurred over the years. The thing to say is that you've done it right when you get fatigue, that fatigue signal in the muscle. If at the end of the workout you're saying, hey, I got some pretty good fatigue here, it got to a point where I even failed at the last set of reps, then you've had a good workout.
And I know that the idea behind this, as Bobby Cooper says, why here less joint wear and tear, more muscle growth, which is obviously the beautiful thing about BFR. For those of us who tend to still train heavy, but in a 12 to 15 rep range, I noticed that the bands actually make me feel stronger. And it's not a placebo. I'll tell you what it is. It's tethering one side of the muscle. It's giving more resilient strength to either the insertion or the endpoint. I don't know, but I can feel my legs are stronger. I can feel that my arms are stronger with that band on, even though they're super swelled and pumped.
Yeah, it may be that it's kind of bracing. And,
yes,
yeah,
it is.
you know,
It's like that tape. It's like these ectoskeletal adaptations that people are putting on to make their muscle stronger. It tethers that side of the muscle for you.
yeah. The other thing I'd say is that we don't completely go away from normal lifting or normal heavy weight lifting.
Right.
For those people in power sports, we think that's an important component. It's just that what we're doing is we're decreasing the wear and tear, as Bobby was saying, by doing a half or even a quarter of the normal heavy lifts that we normally do. And we're relying on BFR and light weights to do most of the training.
But you still get stronger, right?
Absolutely. We have people who do nothing but BFR training, and then every so often, let's say once a month, test their 1 rep max at something. And those 1 rep max with heavy weights are going up.
Interesting. So there is a phenomenon in our population today, and it is peripheral neuropathy, most notably in the legs. And for years, I said it's not diabetic neuropathy because people who aren't diabetic are developing neuropathy. And we know now that it is changes in microvasculature that stop feeding the nerves. Kind of akin to if you sat on your leg and watched a movie and then you got up, it fell asleep. And that transition from fully falling asleep, which is lack of blood flow to the nerves, to waking up is like what people experience who have neuropathy. That waking up feeling, it could be painful, it could be tingly, it could be numb, any group of in between. And I asked Sean, I wonder if wearing these on your legs and going around all day long, that additional intravascular pressure would actually start to open up that vasculature again.
I'm not sure about that, but you've hit on a really important distinction between rigid systems and elastic systems. So the blood vessels, the microvascular that feeds the peripheral nerves, is very sensitive to pressure. And sometimes something that occludes venous pressure also occludes the small arteries and veins in those nerves. And so that's why wide systems that transmit a lot of pressure into the blood supply in these peripheral nerves, and being rigid where you get pressure spikes that just completely occlude that microvascular, those are the things that lead to peripheral neuropathies that can sometimes happen with BFR. Another reason why elastic, relatively narrow systems are a better choice.
So right now, my audience can save 10% off by going to bstrong.training/super-human. Use the coupon code SHR. Plus, they have 6 months, same as cash, which makes it easy. I'm serious. I ask this question in all honesty. BFR clearly works when used sensibly and responsibly. BFR clearly works. Why are you not using it? If you can build muscle faster, I mean, people do all sorts of reckless things. They waste money on all sorts of silly supplements. They try ridiculous things to build muscle when there is something right here that actually does work. So why are you not using it? I want to know. I want to hear from my audience. I want you to tell me, yeah, I know it works, but I'm not using it. Fill in the blank. I want to know, because it doesn't make any sense to me that people will use drugs that carry high risks. They will use silly training methods that put you at risk of injury. But why not BFR? I want to know why, because there's got to be an answer to that. We're going to take our last commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You've heard about blood flow restriction training since 2006 on SHR, but you're still on the fence. Well, here's the push. BFR is more effective at building muscle than anabolic steroids. That's right, I went there, but it's because it's the truth. My experience with the Be Strong blood flow restriction system is proof to me, and now I'm asking myself why I waited so long. You'll see undeniable changes in the targeted muscles in days and weeks like nothing you've ever tried before. I will never stop using them. Give Be Strong longer try. Go to bstrong.training/super-human and use code SHR for 10% off.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety with, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually, in the middle of a panic attack, I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Are you looking for a better way to absorb the nutrients you know you need? Do what I do and start your day with lipospheric supplements from LivOn Labs. Unlike pills and powders, LivOn's patented liposomal encapsulation technology transports nutrients like vitamin C, vitamin B, glutathione, acetyl-L-carnitine, and alpha-lipoic acid to where they need to be, your cells. Visit try.livonlabs.com/Carl to learn why I take these supplements every day to help me perform in the gym and in life. That's try.livonlabs.com/Carl. There's lots of CBD products out there, and there's lots of misinformation too. If you want the best CBD product available and the way to use it to improve athletic performance, there is only one choice: Venga CBD. Venga CBD is 5 times more bioavailable than other products, and you feel it faster. But more importantly, the folks at Venga have identified the best way to use it for athletic performance. Go to SuperHumanRadio.net today and download your free copy of the Endurance Athlete's Guide to CBD. Use code SHR10 and save 10% off at VengaCBD.com. That's VENGACBD.com.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. For those of you who like the Dr. Seeds products, like the Chill Pill and the Oral BPC supplement, you can get them at Amazon.com now, and they've got some amazing offers, really, really great prices. I love the Chill Pill. I take 2 of them before bed at night, and it just takes the edge off. And keep in mind that there's studies on dihydrohinoquiol that show that while it has benzodiazepine-like effects, it does not change sleep architecture, and it does not affect muscle contractile force, which is really, really important. But yeah, if you've had too much caffeine and you think, I'm not going to get to sleep tonight, you take a couple of these chill pills and you will feel the edge come right off. But you can get them at Amazon.com now and save yourself some money. We're talking right now with Dr. James Stray-Gundersen. We're talking about the Be Strong blood flow restriction system. I highly recommend it. I use it. I'm gonna change my physique with this product over the year of 2020 now. I can understand that it's going to work. And I said this going into the break. I don't understand why more people don't use it. It's not that it's expensive. People may look at this price, Dr. Stray-Gundersen, and go, I've got to lay out a few $100s. But the reality is they're wasting hundreds of dollars every month on supplements that make promises that never, ever produce any results.
Right. It's right. Our pricing is right in the ballpark of heart rate monitors, soccer cleats, lots of things that people.
Oura rings,
Right.
all these things that we buy that are important to us, that we put value in. Here it is.
Right, exactly. And one of the things to say is that I think one of the reasons why it hasn't caught on yet has been because it's been difficult for a person to implement themselves. And that's one of the things that we worked at in terms of our design and development. Another aspect is that there's been a lot of negative comments associated with the rigid systems, and that they can potentially be unsafe, which is true. So having that elastic component is another thing that takes a lot of the concern out of the purchase. So, and then I think a final thing is, we just haven't done a good enough job in terms of increasing awareness in general, and your show is going to help a lot with that.
I really think that, just complete frankness, I really think that, I've seen people train with the bands, the tourniquets, and I thought, oh, you've got to be desperate to build muscle. Just train smarter. But the reality is you cannot do without these bands what you can with these bands when it comes to the response to exercise and muscle growth. And so you need to kind of get over your ego, like, oh yeah, I'm that guy, wearing the bands, because it's like, if you're taking creatine and you're not using these bands, what's wrong with you? Like, creatine works, you're taking that. This works too.
Right. And, a lot of these things, I think they'll catch on, and off we go. I think, particularly for the novice, just starting, whether it's trying to get to the gym 3 days a week and doesn't quite know what to do, using the B Strong bands is a safe way of easing into it and not getting injuries from lifting too heavy weights or tweaking your back or dropping a weight on your foot or whatever.
And here's a great point that Bobby Cooper, who I should just let him host the show today, he said you shouldn't be doing cardio without BFR bands on your legs. And really, when you think about it, if you want your cardio to not just produce cardiovascular adaptation, but increases in muscle size, using these bands and walking on the treadmill is killer. It's like, I've said it on the show, after a 30-minute walk with these bands on, you feel like you've been doing lunges for 30 minutes.
Right. And here's something, elite runners are actually really strong in those muscles. They're just very lean also. And so for our elite runners, they use B Strong bands, and they help improve their strength. And actually, as their muscles become stronger and the vasculature improves, they actually demand more out of the cardiovascular system. So they get an increase in blood delivery and oxygen delivery. And so there have been a couple studies now showing that VO2 max increases with the regular use of these bands in a training program.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's not even what they're designed for. That's really amazing. So do you think that doing whole body routines is probably more beneficial than going in and doing a three-part body split with the bands on?
I do. But, you can do it any way you want. I think the key is to get into it and start doing things on a regular basis. But most of our athletes and clients end up drifting into doing all four bands at the same time and doing, let's say, 5 different exercises in our form of 3 sets of 30 reps with 30 seconds rest. And they just get done quicker. And so in 20 minutes, they get a whole body workout, and they get a very nice fatigue signal that's going to initiate that hormonal cascade for them.
So let's talk about that. So you have a preferred training method when using the bands?
We do, but it's just something to get someone started. The real truth is that I think these things should be incorporated into what, if you're already an avid exerciser, that you should just incorporate these into what it is you're already doing. And the way to do that is kind of do your normal routine, but then save about 30 minutes at the end of it to put the bands on and do some more things. In that first part, you've established a little bit of fatigue, and then you can really, I think of it as frosting on the cake, really cement in the benefits of that workout by doing 20 to 30 minutes at the end.
That's interesting. I'll try that. I'll start trying that instead of wearing them into the gym and doing the whole workout with them on. Yeah, absolutely.
And that gives people, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if you're going to try to change the way somebody does things, start with what they do normally in the first place, and then just add it on at the end. Frosting on the cake.
Did I read somewhere there's an app that's available for the Be Strong system?
Yes, there is.
What does the app provide?
At the moment, the app provides a bunch of instructional tips and ways of doing things, and some basic exercises. But right now it's still in development, and we hope to have it where it has a library of a whole bunch of different exercises that people can choose from. And there'll be some more or less canned programs where, it's kind of just, follow the bouncing ball kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then for those that are more into deciding what it is they do for training, then they can modify these things, or they can pick and choose from a variety of different workouts or exercises to make a workout. So,
is there anything that we failed to cover in today's interview?
The one thing that I would say to sum up is I would say that really what we're doing here is we're providing a way for people to improve their performance where they otherwise can't, whether that's an elite athlete that's plateaued with their workouts, or it's somebody who's sedentary, who's just starting out, but really can't do normal kinds of lifting or running or those sorts of things. And that this is a solution for all types of work, whether it's cardio or whether it's power oriented. So
I wondered if I was a construction worker and I wore BFR bands and I actually ate the way you're supposed to eat, every 3 hours, and didn't go out drinking beer with the guys after work, if I would actually be able to build muscle and just do my job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's amazing. It's amazing. I did a show last week with Ronnie Milo, who's with the Renew Life RX group, and he was a competitive bodybuilder, and he used BFR his last competition. He said he only used it on his legs. His legs had never looked that good before on stage.
Really, the first place this got started was the Japanese were using this to get a pump before a bodybuilding competition. So that fits right.
So that was before they started using it for injuries?
Yeah, that was like in the 90s, in the 80s. So it's all about looking good, Carl.
Yeah, so I know Bobby works very hard. He says only if you can handle the pump, I guess, working with them on. So yeah, obviously. Listen, this has been a great interview. I want to tell my audience again how to get their own Be Strong BFR system, probably the safest, most intelligently designed system at an intelligent price. You can actually save 10% off, and they also offer a 6-month same as cash opportunity for those of you. It's only a few $100s when you take advantage of the discounts. BeStrong.training/super-human. I'll never train without them. I really won't. I mean, don't get me wrong. There'll be days where I go to the gym and train just for maybe strength. But then, like you just said, those days I'm going to put them on after, and I'm going to do some burnout reps, which I would call burnout reps. Just fill the muscle with blood, really get that pump. Yeah. And I'm going to continue to wear them after the gym. So we'll see if I end up with my limbs falling off at some point in my life. But I like it. I feel that I sit at my desk and I extend my legs and I lock my quads out a couple times, and the pump is right back in there again. Yeah. I sit here and I flex my biceps and I flex my triceps with them on, and I feel like I just walked out of the gym. The pump comes right back.
Yep. And
the fact that I lose the pump a little bit speaks to the fact that this is not vascular occlusion, because if it was vascular occlusion, if it was rigid, I wouldn't lose the pump by sitting here for a while.
Right.
So
you can always check your pump or check your pulse.
Yes. Oh, wait. Talk about that. What do you mean check your pulse?
Well, so let's say you have the bands on for a long time, and if you have any doubt at all about whether or not you've occluded, just feel your radio
if you can't feel your pulse, then it's probably occlusion, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, the only thing is that some people aren't very good at feeling their pulses, but so they may be confused when they can't feel it. But
I'm dead. I've been doing this whole interview. I'm dead. All right, look, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, happy to do it. No, it was fun. Thank you.
And
so
thanks
much.
for being a sponsor also.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and we'll see everybody tomorrow with the Blueprint Power Hour. Don't forget to tune in for that with Coach Rob Regish. And then Wednesday, we have a special pep talk. Ryan Smith from TaylorMade is coming on, and we're going to be talking about a new peptide that not only may improve fat loss in the face of the standard American diet, but I found out some information through Dr. Seeds that it may actually increase the anabolic response. And this is a peptide nobody is talking about. Of course, you'd expect to hear about it here first, and then everybody will be talking about it, acting like they are the ones that found it first. So tune in for the pep talk at a special time at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. And then, of course, after that, we eat a lot of protein for a few days and stay around with family and just enjoy ourselves before we get back to work. All right, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you for watching Superhuman Radio and listening today.